Hey, welcome, welcome. That is extremely welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Tuesday, October 3rd, 2017. Thanks so much for joining me. As always, I'd like to thank my patrons without whom this is not possible. I want to thank my patrons. I want to thank the patrons for being here and sticking it through with me all the way through the transition. And then we're going to call that entire phase of the Benjamin Dixon Show the transition. That's all we're going to call it, where we moved from Boston. And I want to thank them again today because I want to make sure that all of them get a chance to hear me say thank you for continuing to stick with us while we went through these extremely long transition that I think lasted almost 2 months, 3 months. I lost track, but here we are ready to have good conversations with you again and deep dives into all of the things that matter the most. We're covering a lot of issues tonight that I think are very important. Las Vegas, obviously we have to talk about that again. I am sometimes at a loss because it feels like we should move on as to not seem exploitative of the situation, but then at the same time, if we move on, we become complicit with this ability in the United States for us to just move on from every tragedy so quickly. So it's about finding the right balance, and I think it's important here to really discuss some of the things that came out today, not in terms of the shooter. I don't really care about the shooter anymore, but really about the people whose lives were tragically lost. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Also, we'll have to talk about Pat Robertson, all of our favorite evangelical, I don't know, uncle, or, everybody has somebody like that in their family, I think. But he's made some ridiculous statements that we have to talk about, obviously. And then finally, we're going to talk about Mary. I started mentioning it last night. I want to kind of go into a deep dive and read some of the comments. Actually read the transcript of this gospel artist who went into an interview and explained why she is supportive of Donald Trump. And I like the questions in the comment room, in the chat room already, saying, when did Donald Trump become a Christian? Well, that's a good question. I have no idea when Donald Trump actually became a Christian, but Pat Robertson seems to think that's why there was this entire massacre in Las Vegas. So I want you to weigh in on the discussion, as always, 857-600-0518. And we'll let you sound off as well as me sound out about what's going on. All right, so let's start with Pat Robertson. And in particular, I want to start off discussing his clip that he went on his show, the 700 Club, I think it's still called. Is it still called the 700 Club? I don't know. I remember growing up watching it, and I'm glad I grew up and got beyond watching it. But let's take a listen to what he had to say. Mm-hmm. All right, let me pause it there. I have to pause it there. It's I have to pause it there. I mean, it's already out of control, right? The first thing he does is blames this on a lack of respect for Donald Trump, and that really, to me, okay. And the audience said they couldn't hear the audio, so no problem. I'll get the audio back to you to make sure that you can hear it. But that to me is really just signifies how unstable this man is that so many people listen to. It's really quite amazing and unbelievable that he even still has an audience. So let's do this. Let's take this first caller. We've been on hold anyway. Let's take this first caller while we figure out that audio issue. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question? Doing good, Ryan. Ryan, actually, I want you to hold that thought because it looks as though the audience can't hear. If I know, and that's what's going on. Oh, hello. That's what's going on. Okay, we figured out exactly what's happening and why they can't hear you. But I want you to hold that thought for a couple of seconds. And boom, at this point. Now, Ryan, I want you to say hello to the audience, Ryan.
Hello, everybody.
There we go. We have Ryan. We have live audio, and everything should sound 100% better for the audience. Okay, Ryan, thanks for the call. What is on your mind?
Hey, I just wanted to talk about the DM I sent you today. The different states have different gun laws. I just want to get that out there and explain to your audience. I've lived in Nevada for on and off for 5 years, and the gun laws in Nevada, it's like the Wild West. Pretty much anything goes. You could buy a suppressor. You pay the $200 to the ATF for the tax stamp, and I think it's a quick background check, just like buying a gun, and you will get a suppressor for your pistol or your rifle or the whatever. It's also a machine gun state. You can legally purchase and own a machine gun in that state, even though machine guns have been banned.
So that's the part.
New manufacturing sales.
Let me jump in there. Let me jump in there because that's the part that I appreciate you sending me the DM, because that's the part that confuses me, and maybe you can help us understand better in the audience, because I was under the impression that machine guns or automatic rifles were banned not on the state level per se, but on the federal level, right? So they're banned in terms of being able to be sold to civilians. Help us with that.
There are you cannot manufacture today in 2017. If I made, let's just say I was a gun manufacturer and I made an automatic weapon, I could not sell that to somebody. If I had made this
before
weapon prior to 1986, I could have sold it to somebody. And Nevada is one of those states where you can buy one.
As long as it was manufactured before 1986.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct.
Wow.
So also it's high capacity magazine state. The final thing I want to mention is listening to the audio from yesterday's I listened to you in podcast form today. Listening to the audio of the actual event, it sounded more like that bump fire device, which is a magazine or a stock that you put on your weapon, and it has a spring in it, and it bounces back and forth as you pull the trigger. So it bounces the trigger away from your finger and then back toward it as you pull it. And it makes it like a quasi-automatic. Go look on YouTube, bump fire. Have your audience do that. This thing is real. It is 100% legal to make it a quasi-automatic weapon. Having been in the military and fired true automatic weapons, it did not sound like a true automatic weapon.
Okay.
So I just wanted to throw that out there. Some laws and how Nevada is, and some things, what the
some of those variations
had, some variants and some things that are completely legal in that state. You cannot buy high capacity magazines in California or Illinois or Washington,
but you can in Las Vegas.
You can in Las Vegas. You can in Reno. You can. I remember going to the hardware store in my little dirt town in Nevada, and this is a hardware store where I'm buying nails, a screwdriver, and a gun and ammunition. I mean, it was almost you go get your driver next door and say, hey, get a gun while you're here too. It's that kind of culture.
Let me hold it there, Ryan. Ryan, thanks so much for the call, man, and thanks so much for all that information. So okay, from someone who's fired these types of weapons before, from listening to it, it didn't sound to him as though it was an automatic. I did pick up on the bump stock. That was possibly what he was using, and this is one of the methods that people are able to rig a semi-automatic and give it the effect of an automatic, and that is legal. Like the caller Ryan was saying, that is legal. The craziest thing is that loophole, right? So even if he wasn't using a fully automatic weapon, there's still the loophole in that any automatic weapon manufactured before 1986 can be purchased, can be sold to civilians. And I was chatting back and forth with the caller
And it literally sounds like Nevada is the wild, wild west. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like Nevada is the Wild West and anything goes. And that is I don't want to see. Sometimes we don't have the vocabulary to really describe what it is. I wanted to say problematic, but that's beyond problematic. That's deadly. That's how we got what we had on Sunday. All right, let's take this next caller, and then we're going to jump into the conversation about Pat Robertson. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, Bryce, what's going on?
Hey, Bryce, how's it going, man? Thanks for the call. What's on your mind?
Always. So Sam Cedar said it yesterday on the show that the NRA owns the Republican Party, and no legislation is going to be passed, and we're going to continue to have these problems.
Yeah.
You know, and Pat Robertson is just the worst. I mean, the whole religious right is just the worst, and you know, I just don't know anymore. It's just really mind-boggling.
Yeah.
How messed up they are.
Yeah.
And my last thing, I gotta take a piggyback off something that you said a while back with Obama's daughters when the guy was criticizing her. When it comes to Mary, really, that's what you do. That's what you do. you just go and just do that.
Hey, man. Hey, Mary can get it too. Thanks for the call, man. Mary gonna get it tonight. Mary, quite contrary. You guys will know who we're talking about. I might play a little clip of something so you can know why I'm such a fan. Was a fan, but let's take the callers' comments one at a time, right? And I think it's worthwhile unpacking. The Republican Party is fully owned by the NRA. Here's the problem. It's not just that the Republican Party is owned by the NRA. It's that the United States government, with regard to the Second Amendment, is beholden to the NRA. The NRA has an unmatched power in the United States that no other advocacy group or no other special interest group has. They have the ability to interpret or to cause the Second Amendment to be interpreted in such a fashion that it is the most beneficial to their benefactors, to the gun cartels, to the gun industry in general. That is the power of the NRA, and I have yet to find another organization that has that type of power above and beyond the wishes of some of their members. Right? It's not as though, you know, sometimes we lump NRA and NRA members into the same batch, but you have NRA members who are upset with the NRA for how they came out against Philando Castile, who was a legal gun owner and was killed by the police. And instead of supporting his Second Amendment right to carry a weapon and not be killed because of it, the NRA took the most racist line possible with regard to Philando Castile, and the members, a lot of the members, had a huge problem with it. And so it's the NRA has this ability, this power that actually transcends their collective membership. And so it's not only, you know, the caller's right, and Sam Cedar he's right, the NRA owns the Republican Party, but it's not just that. It's the fact that the NRA owns the conversation on the Second Amendment of the United States, such that we have the most liberal, and by liberal I mean loose, I mean interpretive, I mean it is the most creative interpretation of the second of any amendment. And it's coming from people who demand that we interpret every other amendment in the strictest fashion. So it's that. That's number one. And then two, the caller brought up Pat Robertson, and we have the audio now. You should be able to hear what he had to say. And this is a component of not only the problem of the Republican Party, but it's also a problem of religion in politics. And let's just listen to this full talk as he explains why stuff like this happens. You know, this is his grand thesis about why things like the massacre in Las Vegas happens. Let's see if you can listen
in. You know, what I'd like to give you is the fact that we have disrespect for authority. There is profound disrespect of our president all across this nation. They say terrible things about him. It's in the news. It's in other places. There's disrespect now for our national anthem.
Okay, pause it right there. All right. So the first thing he says is that there's disrespect for Donald Trump. You know, this is, again, I've done an entire video on this, an entire episode really on this logic that comes from Christians with regard to authority. And the problem is that, yeah, we have to discuss it within the framework of religion for people who, I mean, the vast majority of America is religious. So for us to debunk this, we actually have to do it within the realm of religion. And they're using a particular scripture in the Bible that says that if, you know, there's no power in authority that is not set there, that is not established by God. Right. And so if you challenge that authority, you're challenging God. Well, here's a hypocritical part of, well, I mean, big surprise. They're hypocrites. Right. Number one, Pat Robertson wasn't saying this shit when Obama was in office. So it's really selective. It's 100% selective. Never mind the fact that what he's saying is so insidious and so disrespectful to the people who lived through this and the people who died. Never mind the fact that it dismisses the fact that many of the people who died probably are evangelical Christians, right? The odds are in the favor of a lot of the people in attendance at that concert probably are evangelical Christians who have the same belief system as Pat Robertson, but his ignorant ass wants to get on television and tell all of the people and all the families that have lost loved ones that they died because nobody respects Trump. So not only is it logically, not logical, but not only is it scripturally inaccurate, it's also an insult to people who believe the same thing that he believes. Number two, like, okay, so actually for me to get to number two, I actually have to finish number one. So it's inaccurate in terms of the Bible because it shows his hypocrisy because he wasn't saying this when Obama was president, right? But then also that, you know, it defies just reason, right? It defies reason because one, how can we, biblical reason, you cannot tell me that there are people in power that we are not supposed to challenge. You can't. You can't even tell me that from a scripture. You can't tell me that religiously. You can't tell me that historically. You can't tell me that logically. You can't even tell me that with some sense of consistency because, number one, they are not consistent with this. These same people attack Obama. These same people attack Bill Clinton. So it's selective, number one. But then two, historically, you can't say this because how would you explain the founding of America in the first place? It's completely founded on our ability to challenge the authority of King George. So they can't do it that way. I mean, historically, in terms of the United States, you can't. How do you explain us challenging and going to war with Adolf Hitler? So just in every way imaginable, his argument here makes absolutely no sense. And I'm actually kind of tired of having to break apart these fatuous arguments. The problem is when are the people who support this idiot going to realize that he's a effing idiot? I mean, he is. There's really no other way to say this because he's twisting the Bible. I mean, big surprise. This is what they do. They take the Bible, they twist it and they manipulate it to get their followers to do their bidding, right? To follow and support nobody but the Republican Party. And this gives them power within the Republican Party, which is seductive. They want that power. They want access to power. They want access to President Trump. They want access to the White House. They want those reigns of power because it is seductive and it's something huge for people who probably grew up as country bumpkins. No offense to country bumpkins, but you know, when you know most of them, to them, this is the apex of what they can accomplish is to be seated next to the president. Never mind the president that they're seated next to is nothing remotely close to Christian. So he's blaming this incident on the fact that Christians or America has such a lack of respect for Donald Trump. But here's the other problem. Number two, Donald Trump doesn't have any respect for America. Donald Trump doesn't have respect for himself. Donald Trump doesn't have respect for the office of the presidency. Of the president. He has no respect whatsoever. And yet we're being told by this old curmudgeon that we're supposed to somehow respect Donald Trump above and beyond his ability to respect himself. Get the hell out of here. There is one person who is the greatest, who has the greatest disrespect for the White House. It's not you. It's not me. It's not those of us who are trying to hold Donald Trump accountable. You know who it is? It's Donald Trump. Donald Trump has shown and demonstrated the greatest disrespect for decency, for humanity, for all things that are good in the world. For, I mean, the people of Puerto Rico, he shows so much disrespect. The journalist who was handicapped, I mean, he shows so much disrespect, or disabled rather, showed so much disrespect, and yet we're being told by this man, Pat Robertson, that the reason for the shooting was a lack of respect for Donald Trump. And keep in mind, I'm actually trying to be patient and explain the problems with his argument, you know, as logically as I can, based on this ridiculous argument. But the underlying disrespect of a statement like this in and of itself is so absurd that everyone who ever remotely believed in this guy should take a step back and say, what the hell is wrong with Pat Robertson? Like, I shouldn't even have to break it apart religiously, scripturally, you know, I shouldn't have to break it apart logically as much as it can be, considering how illogical it is. I shouldn't have to break it apart historically. I should not have to try to explain why it's problematic. The fact that he said it is the problem. Sometimes men, and by men I mean men and women, human beings, do evil and horrible things, and there's no reason to explain it other than this is what that person did. But you've got to find some way of making it fit your worldview, and some way of making it comport to your myopic religious views, so that you're going to absolve the shooter. You're going to forgive the shooter and not hold him accountable here and say it's the problem. It's the fault of people who disrespect Donald Trump. Okay. That's number one. Then a little bit I paused it on. He said the flag. I mean, man, F Donald Trump, F the flag, and F Pat Robertson. I would say the words, but I got kids listening. Bump all of them, because you know what disrespects the flag. You know what disrespects the national anthem. You know what well, I mean, the national anthem is trash anyway because it was written about slavery. But forget that. You know what's the greatest disrespect to what America should be? America is, because America is not the country that we say it should be. We're not the country that was written in the documents. Yes, it was written by white supremacists and slave owners, but it was aspirational, and we're not even hitting the target of the aspiration. So the greatest disrespect to the United States of America is the United States of America, just like the greatest disrespect to the White House, to the office of the presidency, is Donald J. Trump, president of the United States. So miss me with all that, Pat Robertson. Let's listen to a little bit more of what this fool had to say.
Disrespect for our veterans, disrespect for the institutions of our government, disrespect for the court system, all the way up and down the line, disrespect. And when you lose that kind of respect, you lose this authority. But more than anything, until there is biblical authority, there has to be some controlling authority in our society.
Really?
And there is none.
Really? Because the last time I checked, Pat, let me pause you there. Last time I checked, Pat, the governing authority, the ruling authority of the United States is the Constitution of the United States. The same Constitution that gives you the ability to spew your hate-filled rhetoric, Pat Robertson, is the same Constitution that gives me the ability to say, I don't give a shit what you have to say. It gives me the ability to say, I don't have to live according to your religious doctrine. I don't have to live according to your whims and your interpretation. Even though I'm a Christian, I don't even have to live to your interpretation of the Bible. You're not my pope, and I don't have to even serve a pope. I don't have to believe anything that you teach us. That's the governing authority, is the Constitution of the United States. And so here he is lamenting that there's no respect and there's no authority. Well, I mean, what the hell do you really want? Let's think about this, right? If you believe that there's no real governing authority, despite the existence of the Constitution, and then add on to that, you believe that there's a lack of respect for the flag and the national anthem, and that so nationalism, right? And then, actually, it gets better. Before I even make that argument, I have to pause that argument mid sentence, because I want you to hear what he wants to be the governing authority.
There is no vision of God, the people say. There's no vision of God. The people run amok. When there's no vision of God, the people run amok. And that we have taken from the American people the vision of God, the whole idea of reward and punishment, an ultimate judge of all our actions.
Yeah.
We've taken that away.
Yeah, all right, shut up. So basically he's saying there's no governing authority because God is not the governing authority of America. All right. So let's do the sum total of what he actually wants. Right. He doesn't want us to disrespect the president who has no respect for himself. So he wants, obviously, anyone who has criticisms of Donald Trump or anyone who tries to hold Donald Trump accountable for us to shut up. So that's authoritarianism. Right. Then the second thing that he wants is for there to be some governing authority that supersedes, I guess, the Constitution of the United States, because the Constitution of the United States is already here, but he wants a governing authority to supersede that in the United States. So that's not a democracy. That's a theocracy. In Islam, we would call it Sharia law. So this is what he wants. He wants an authoritarian regime that is forced to love the national anthem and forced to love and respect the veterans and troops. So he wants a theocracy. He wants Sharia law. He wants an authoritarian regime where we can't criticize the president of the United States, and he wants us to be uber nationalistic. I'm sorry, that sounds a lot like Nazi Germany, or, you know, a Christian Sharia law state. So anyway, the governing authority of the United States, people already know, it's the Constitution. It gives him the right to say what he wants to say, and it gives us the right to criticize him and mock him and laugh him to scorn. And you know, sometimes I feel bad because he's an old guy in the United States of America. He's barely hanging on for dear life. And part of me wants to respect my elders in the sense that, he could live. I don't know. He's got enough money. He might outlive me. Right. So I'm not trying to mock him for being an old idiot, but the fact that he is a complete moron, and it's used in, and I don't want to be reductive, right, and call him a moron, because it's really strategic. It's very intentional. It's a very intentional ploy to convince a lot of Americans who happen to be Christian that they must respect the authority of the president when it's a Republican president. They must be nationalistic when it suits them and to serve, the purposes of the Republican Party. And they must look for an authority above the Constitution, which is fine if that's what you want to live your life, because the Constitution actually gives you the right to have whatever, as long as it doesn't hurt someone else. So if you want to put the Bible above the Constitution gives you that right. But by doing that, it makes it logical to them to say that everyone else in America must abide by their interpretation of the Bible. And therein lies the greatest problem, because it no longer becomes a passive religious experience. It becomes an aggressive religious crusade in which they are seeking to make sure that everyone in America must obey exactly what they say the Bible says. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and/or question?
Hey, this is Steve in Washington. Thanks for taking the call. I haven't been able to listen live in a while, so it's good to call in again.
Hey, it's good to be back live, man. Thanks so much. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I like the setup you've got behind you. It looks good. So I did a very informal survey online today to see who has been affected by gun violence. So I was asking with the intention of seeing just who's been affected, either known someone who's been killed, or known someone who's been injured or wounded, or someone who's been held up, or by the police, or who themselves has been directly affected by it. I was asking to see who knows someone who's committed suicide because of gun violence.
Wow.
And it was pretty stunning to see, in my opinion, that there's almost everybody responded in some way they know either themselves have been affected by it or know someone who has.
Yeah.
And if there was any other crisis in this country where such a majority of the population has been affected by it, then we would do something about it as a country. It's unbelievable. And every time, and the reason I thought about it, because every time there's a mass shooting like this, it really hits me hard, because I've been affected by it.
Yeah.
But it's something, you deal with. But then every single time you hear about it on the news,
it brings it back.
There was like 5 people killed in Lawrence, Kansas yesterday too.
Wow.
Because of a gun shoot. It's just, and so I think we can really help each other out when these things happen by just like checking in with our friends and family that we know have been affected by gun violence, and just seeing how they're doing and asking how they're doing. And but I guess the point was just any other crisis, if there's a health crisis or maybe not anymore, but if there was some sort of crisis, but because it's guns, we don't do anything about it. So, but yeah, it's pretty shocking how many people are affected by it. So.
Absolutely. Listen, thanks so much for the call. I think that was actually really a great thing to suggest, because a lot of times I don't like to talk about my experience in the midst of a national tragedy, but I have to put it into perspective, because like I said last night, it really is, it is about our individual experiences in a collective tragedy. Right. And what I mean is that each and every one of us are experiencing this in our own way. And it brings up like pain. It brings up pain, and it brings up memories. It brings up memories of friends that were killed by gun violence. It brings up, it brings up memories of entire family who was killed in Mississippi earlier this year by gun violence. 8 people killed in a small town called Brookhaven, Mississippi. 2 of the victims, we knew their mothers from high school. And so it is about our individual experiences in this collective tragedy. And so it's not unreasonable for us to pause and ask each other. And thank you, caller, for doing that. For us to ask each other, how are you doing? And it's don't get me wrong. I know some people who take advantage of that, and they make things about them all the time, which is why I'm so reluctant to do that type of thing. But the reality of it is that if you don't pause to do it, you could become so callous to what's happening around you that you really become dead on the inside. And that's the last thing that we need to happen. Let's take this next caller. Caller, you're live on the air. What is your name, comment, and or question?
Yeah, how you doing, Benjamin? This is Wayne from Virginia.
Wayne, how's it going, man? Good to hear your voice. How's everything?
I'm doing all right. I just thought I'd give you a call because I had a compliment, and I did want to share a few things for you. Hopefully that's enough time, but
okay,
just wanted to share a few things with you.
For sure, go for it.
Okay, first off, the show that you did, I believe it was yesterday, the majority of it, you talked about the Las Vegas shooting, and I had to listen to that video twice because it was that good, because literally everything you said, I agree 100% with. So I just wanted to say good job on that particular video.
Thanks, man.
More than likely, I'm going to watch it again.
For sure. Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
And I also wanted to share a few things. I've been following politics since 9/11. And I believe I told you this before, but I just wanted to give you a little something different that may surprise you. But I've been following politics real closely since 9/11, and really since the election last year. When I say I'm really on the political scene, I'm really on it. I listen to your show and other shows. I mean, I read the New York Times, the Washington Post, Bloomberg Politics, you name it. I'm on it, and I'm on it so much to the point of obsession. That's how much I, pay attention to everything,
for sure.
Regarding what's going on. And the one thing that I can say that Donald Trump did for me, even though I clearly didn't vote for him, the one thing that I can say he did for me is motivate me to want to pursue a career in politics, because I do want to, get involved and make a difference,
Yeah, for sure. You can't hear it, but I'm giving you a round of applause. I think that really matters, man, because we need people. It's the people's public service is done by the people. And a lot of times we think it's people who are more you know, educated or rich or whatever. And those are the are attorneys, you know, maybe you have education, but you don't have a law degree. Like I don't have a law degree, but you know, and you underestimate your ability to contribute to the national conversation. And that's exactly the wrong thing to think, right? We absolutely need everyone across the spectrum, people with master's degrees and PhDs, down to people who didn't even go to college, people who went to trade school. We need that entire spectrum. And so if Donald Trump did that, you know, at least we could say thanks to Donald Trump for being so horrible that he's encouraging people to jump into this fight to do the right thing, man. So Wayne, thanks so much for sharing that, man. I'll let you get the last word real quick.
Okay, yeah, like I said, you know, he did motivate me to want to get involved and do some things. And honestly, I am a hip hop fan to the death. Hip hop is in my blood, but I could never really figure out exactly what I want to do. You know, everyone would ask me, you know, okay, so you're into hip hop, so what is that you want to do? And the only answer that I could give them was, I want to be behind the scenes, but I could never give them a real true description as to what path I wanted to take. But when I made the decision that I wanted to pursue a career in politics, and trust me, it took me months to even come to that conclusion, because I really thought about, okay, do I go with my first love, which is hip hop, or do I go with my new passion, which is politics? And after when all of the options and you know, looking at where I wanted to go, eventually politics did come into play. And the ultimate goal for me personally is to actually become a member of Congress. That's the ultimate goal for me right there.
Hey man, hey, like I said, go for it. We need you. We need everyone. Hey man, Wayne, thanks so much for the call, man. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you.
857-600-0518. Ryan in the chat room said, "Go where you are called, brother." Listen, I used to run one. I used to want to run for office, but you know, I mean, you guys could probably tell I come from like meager means. Like I don't even come from the upper middle class. I don't even come from the middle class. Like we come from the lower middle class, and at sundry times we fell into poverty, like just straight up poverty, where we're sitting in, you know, the WIC line. You know, that's how I came up. So, you know, I never grew up with you know, outside of my general smarts, which I'm lucky enough to be smart, right? You know, I don't take it for granted and I don't dismiss it. Like, you know, I'm fucking brilliant. Okay, great. But I didn't grow up in an environment that actually could send me to Harvard. I grew up having to fight just to get accepted into the damn magnet program. I'm going somewhere with this. Stick with me. And so all of my aspirations for running for office, you know, that I got, they came like later in my life. They came in my 20s, when most people, they're being groomed for that they're being groomed for that in middle school, and they're being groomed by their well-to-do parents. And so, you know, in reality, I realized that, okay, you know, it may not be for me to run for office, but I can do what I can do, right? I can do this. I can do this media. I can do this. You can talk to the audience and encourage people. And so when people listen to the show, and whatever you may hear me say that may trigger you to get involved, then I know that I'm doing my job. And so I say this to Wayne and to anyone else, you know, all of us have a role to play, and we need every single one of us to be in that role. And that role really so much, I can't stress enough. We need more people involved politically on the national level and on the local level. I mean, on the everyday level. It's fine for this to be an obsession. You know why? Because it affects every single aspect of our life, without question. Every single aspect of our life is affected by politics. And so when people say, oh, it's not the time to talk about politics, that's a damn lie. That's a damn lie. Every single day is a day to talk and discuss politics and policy, and not just the game, right? Here's where it's very important for us to delineate between actually making a contribution to the body politic and just participating in another sport. Because a lot of times, and I can't say that I'm guilty of it, but I can say that it's my guilty pleasure. I do enjoy the horse race of politics. You know, for me, election night is like the damn Super Bowl squared. Like you know, and I don't care if it's a special election night. Like for me, it's my, I just said what it was. And I can't even remember the phrase, but you know, it's my guilty pleasure that I enjoy politics as a horse race. However, that is not the level of participation that we need from you, the people. We need people who are involved in the local politics and changing their community. Like people who are just as interested in who's going to be mayor of their city as they are interested who's going to be the president of the United States. Just as interested in the changes and the ordinances in your local city and the municipalities as you are policies on the national level. We absolutely need that. And then we need people who see the horse race. Fine. I'm not knocking you because I love the horse race. See the horse race and they can see CNN style politics where they're putting people up to fight each other, and it becomes a really good sporting event. Like who's going to win? He bobbed and weaved, right? You know, that kind of sport with politics. But we also need you to see how that is detrimental to actual progress and how these routine and entertaining conversations never really change anything. It just rehashes and recycles and regurgitates the same talking points. Quite literally, I can sit back and predict what the next person is going to say on CNN, depending on who the individual is, because there are certain roles and caricatures that they want characters that they want to be filled. And so I say all of that to say is we all have roles that we need to play, and we need to be mindful that as we are obsessed with politics, that we are not only obsessed with politics, but we're obsessed with actually getting stuff done. And once you get the mindset of let's get stuff done, then you start seeing through all the bullshit that's on television, and you realize that they're not really interested in making progress. They're interested in ratings and entertaining us. All right, let's take this last caller real quick, or the last caller before I talk about Mary. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hi, Ben.
Hey, Vita, what is going on?
How are you, Ben?
I'm doing good.
Thank you so much.
It's good to hear
from you. This is right up my alley today.
Good to hear from you.
I have a lot to say about this conversation because
go for it.
It starts from our first encounter about having conversations and tying it into policy and critical thinking, because we can have all these conversations, and what hits me right hits me hard is to have these conversations when you know the truth. You know, when you have facts and receipts, you always talk about having receipts to back things up. Yeah. And you hear these conversations with people that have these degrees or have these positions, like, you know, you have the news journalists of CNN, MSC, any news outlet, anybody particularly. But when you know the information that you're putting out is just propaganda, you're giving half truths or partial truths for your own particular gain or your own agenda. Yeah. But it also harms such a greater amount of people in our society, and that really boils down to what the problem that we have. Yeah. And then we scapegoat what the policy. We never put up the information, show the connection, like the data that is so necessary when we look at unemployment. We'll say unemployment is 4% in our economics, but when you break it down into categories, African Americans and youth might be 50%, 25%. Yeah. You know, and we don't talk about those things. So we how can we make policy and have discussions with our politicians, because they'll believe those conversations. When I go to council meetings or participate in these conversations, to go to have these conversations with these individuals, I get drowned out. I don't. I do have a college degree, but I don't have the status, maybe, you know, the all the connections. But I'm smart. I'm intelligent. I have critical thinking. I'll look up stuff, but it's not received. It's like talking to a wall. Yeah. And I listen to even like the polls that they do. You go online and do a poll. I'm going to make up a poll and ask some questions, It could be anybody on the receiving end. You don't even know where the data is coming from.
Right.
Who you talking to? How is that supposed to be substantiate what the pulse of the people are?
Yeah.
And who are the people that you're polling?
Right.
That's not enough evidence for me. You know.
Yeah. Well, you know what?
So
before you move on, because you say something, you're pointing back to something that I gently touched on, but I think you're bringing it up. We need to talk about it again, which is the fact that, you know, there are a lot of us who are just average Joes in the eyes of America. That, let me start here. Politics has become an elitist game, right? And this is across the board. Democrats, you know, Republicans, whatever, even hell, even some of the Green Party. Everyone is looking for an elite type of person, you know, someone with that education. And what they do, Vita, like you said, it's kind of like talking to a brick wall. They won't hear. They don't take the time to see the capacity that you have to contribute, because it's not about that. It's about, you know, it's about them finding somebody who went to Harvard when in actuality, you probably can go toe to toe with any of them.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So go ahead, get the last word.
What I'm trying to say is that it's more important to me. It's not so much about the party where you are, or a Democrat, whatever you choose to affiliate your group that you want to be with. To me, I look at what the policy and how it's what's behind the policy. Who's the author? Who's going to be at that table? Who are the lawyers that this politician is going to have when he goes to office? Who's going to be helping him set up the agenda? That's where I fall down at. That's why I have so much problems when I talk to the candidates or the politicians that are in the office that's in my district.
Because they don't want to answer that question.
I ask them, and they're like, you know, oh, don't ask that question.
Exactly.
How dare you answer that?
They don't want to answer that
who
question,
are you
Vita.
to question that?
Yeah, they don't want to answer that question at all. Thanks so much, Vita, for the call. We missed you. I've been off the air for so long, man. It's great to hear from you. Definitely want to hear from you again. 857-600-0518. She's absolutely right. You know, and I know we're kind of all over the place, but I haven't heard from you all in a long time. So I'm glad to hear from you tonight as we discuss these things. But we do need everyone to get involved in politics. And you know what? You got to find your own way, because here's the thing, like, you know, I guess if I wanted to run for office now, which I don't really want to, I love what I do. And I think it's more than loving what I do. I'm supposed to be, I have to do this. Like it's a labor of love. Like I literally came in, you know, this afternoon, 5 minutes before airtime and got set up and cut this on. And, you know, it is I actually had to pause and ask myself, like, what the hell is wrong with me? What the hell is wrong with me that that I'm doing these long and really these insane working hours in order to do media, political media and political commentary. And I was trying to figure out why I would talk about that on the air tonight. And I decided, I was like, well, I'm not going to talk about it. That's just for me, you know, just realize that I'm committed to this. This is what I'm supposed to do. I love doing it, and I will still work. You know, I'm no longer working in the marketing where I used to work 8 hours or 9 hours, 10 hours, and then come home and do my show. Now I'm doing media all day, and I'm still doing damn near 16 hours a day. But, you know, it's not to say that to complain. It's to say that I have to do this. And, you know, so whereas I could run for office now and then, you know, I've kind of made inroads and stuff. It's like, I have to do this. And whatever that is for you all, that's where we need you, because that's where you're going to put this time in. That's where you're going to put the grind in. That's where you're going to actually change the world, is where you're willing to sacrifice all these hours and not only sacrifice hours, because I don't want to give this fake meritocracy thing where you have to work so hard to get there. It's not only about the hours that you will put in, it's about the impact that you have as you do it. And so, you know, I don't know. I don't want to make this just a kind of inspirational, encouraging session, because, you know, we got enough people who do that every day. But the fact of the matter is that we desperately need all of you to get involved in that way. Okay. The Ali on the Doctor Who is fierce. Yeah, I had another one, but I can't find the other Doctor Who. I'm reading comments from the comment section. They're talking about the new set behind me. All right, so let's talk about Mary Mary. And then I'll close out. I want to talk about one guy in particular who was killed. His story really got to me. But let me talk about this this sister here. So anyway, like whoever you voted for, that's your business. I don't really care, right? If you voted for Donald Trump, and you're in a particular demographic that he promised to hurt, then I do wonder. Like if you're Hispanic or Latino and you voted for Donald Trump and then you're surprised that he's, ending the Dreamer Act, DACA, I do kind of have to wonder. But ultimately, whoever you voted for is your business. And that, it is what it is. We're stuck with Donald Trump now. So it's irrelevant. But it's when people try to, just like with Pat Robertson, is when people try to justify voting for Donald Trump based on religious purposes. It's that's my wheelhouse. That's what got me into politics in the first place. I got this damn poster over here. God is not a Republican. If you don't have that book already, go get it. But that's my wheelhouse, and I can sniff it out. I can see right through the bullshit, because one of two things is happening. Either if you voted for Donald Trump based on this idea that Donald Trump is a Christian, you either have the most overly simplistic definition of Christianity, or you have an opportunistic interpretation of Christianity, like the Robert Jeffress of the world, the Pat Robertsons of the world, the Paula Whites of the world, those people who want to use religion as a means of gaining political power to the detriment of their own constituents, their congregants. Right. It's one thing if you're using religion to get political power so that you can help your constituents and your congregants. But it's another thing when you are getting political power at the expense of your congregants. And so it's one of two things. When I hear someone say that Donald Trump they voted for him because he's a Christian and they wanted to have some Christian values, I'm like, either you don't understand your faith or you're manipulating your faith. One or two things. With Pat Robertson, I think he's honestly manipulative. I think he's honestly using this platform because he understands how much money is involved, how he can connect and get money in order to sustain his business venture, which is his television network. Pat Robertson, it is all opportunistic. He knows damn well that he is feeding you guys a line of lies. But with Mary Mary, I actually think she has one in particular, Tina Campbell. Mary Mary is a gospel group, like I described. I actually think that she has such a reductive definition of her faith that she probably actually believes that she's making a true statement when she's talking about this here. And it's in theroot.com. It's an interview, and I mentioned it briefly last night, but I wanted to discuss it in detail. So I'm going to read a portion of it, and then I'm going to discuss it, and then I want to talk about one of the victims of the Las Vegas tragedy. So in January, she wrote an open letter saying why Christians should support Donald Trump. And she used the same line of, we should respect the authorities that are giving, this thing about, we're supposed to respect all power that's in power because God put that power there. But wherever the hell were all of you when everybody was all these religious leaders were disrespecting the hell out of Barack Obama? No, not holding Barack Obama accountable, which every single one of us should have been doing, which I started to do later on once I started realizing who Barack Obama was not so much. I wasn't worried about who he was. I wasn't worried about the role of the presidency and how he, facilitating American imperialism and spreading American capitalism. It wasn't that, because I knew that going in. But when I realized who he was not and what he was not going to do, that's when I finally clicked. It finally clicked, and I said, okay, I have to start holding Barack Obama accountable. I'm not talking about people like that who want to hold Barack Obama accountable. I'm talking about people who undermine him from day one for no other reason than political purposes and political points. Right. And then they use religion to justify that, and then to turn around and have them all turn and say, now our religion dictates that we have to respect Donald Trump because he's a Christian. And I'm like, how, Sway? how the hell can you look at Donald Trump and say that he's a Christian and then use that as a justification why not only explaining how you voted for him, but now why everybody has to support him. And by support, they don't mean support and hold accountable. They mean don't ever complain. Don't ever hold him accountable, because if you try to hold Donald Trump accountable, then now you're disrespecting the presidency and you're not respecting the authority that God placed in power. Do you guys see the manipulative game that's played? And I have to talk about it, because if I don't, there are millions of Americans who are religious who are confused by this stuff every single day. And what they end up doing is, out of the kindness and the sincerity of their heart, they begin to do what people like Pat Robertson tell them to do. And they begin voting, knowing in their mind that there's something wrong, right? Knowing that something doesn't add up, but knowing in their mind that something is wrong, but they feel compelled to vote for conservatism, despite the fact that conservatism is damaging them in a very material way, above and beyond any damage that the Democratic Party can do. Because damn, I mean, have you seen Donald Trump's tax plan? You think neoliberalism was run amok before? Wait until you get a load of Paul Ryan's tax plan, which is going to be detrimental to so many of their congregants. But you know what? Pat Robertson, Robert Jeffress, Paula White, Jerry Falwell Jr., none of them care, because it gives them access to political power. All of that to address now the opposite side, the people who I feel like they may be sincere, but they have such an overly simplistic definition of their religious participation in politics that they need to get the business too, right? That they need to get called on the carpet too. And this is the most, how can I say this? This is the most benevolent approach that I could possibly have to Tina Campbell, is to say that she probably just don't know better. Now she's going to flip that, and she's going to get, in her feelings and everything else, and say, I know my Lord, I know Jesus, and all that kind of stuff. Then we can address that at that point. But right now I'm still going to be benevolent. All right, here we go. So here's the reading. I said all that to set this up. Root.com wrote that the singer became embroiled in a scuttlebutt early this year after she wrote an open letter encouraging the masses to pray for the president-elect Donald Trump, which many thought was a sign she was in support of the controversial figure. Although the sixth and final season of the reality, I don't care about a reality show. Skipping on, this is what Tina Campbell had to say. You ain't never going. Oh. Okay, this is how she wanted to talk. Okay, cool. You ain't never going to see that in there. Donald Trump is not that much part of my life. I had a perspective, I had a feeling, and I put it out there. I know there's some good people. There's some people who don't agree. I do not agree with a lot of the decisions that this man makes, and I made that very clear in my statement. Okay, all right, cool. So far, she said, I was faced with two presidential candidates that I really did not approve of. And so I had to find something, a commonality with one of them that would make me feel like I have to vote. I should utilize my right to vote. Since I don't prefer either of them, what can I find that would make me vote? And some of Donald Trump's views of Christianity, honestly, is what caused me to vote for him. Huh? Let me read that last sentence again. And some of Donald Trump's views on Christianity, honestly, is what caused me to vote for him. I mean, which views, Tina? Which views, Mary? Quite contrary. Which views? The view where he doesn't even realize that the book in the Bible called 2 Corinthians, even though there's a number 2 in front of it, we say 2 Corinthians and not 2 Corinthians. Or the fact that he could not remember a single case when he asked for forgiveness, which is quite literally the centerpiece. The entire religion hinges on asking for forgiveness. But here's Donald Trump saying that he really couldn't think of an occasion when he asked for forgiveness. Which views on Christianity? I mean, I don't remember the verse where it says that you could grab them by the pussy, and that's something that God approves of. So what, don't blame God. I mean, God, I'm trying to defend God here, and I'm like saying, God damn it, because it's so goddamn stupid. It's so stupid. I don't understand. Like, why would you? God has a bad enough time, a bad enough reputation to not just have to be saddled with so much stupidity. I mean, how do you blame you deciding to vote for Donald Trump on God based on Donald Trump being something he's clearly not? Donald Trump is the antithesis of what your Sunday school teacher says that you should be when you grow up, right? And then I paused and I thought about it. And of course, click, it came to me. The views that she's talking about has nothing to do with his character, his demeanor, his compassion, or the lack thereof. It has nothing to do with his ability to show empathy or his inability to show empathy. It has nothing to do with anything that is redeemable, anything that's remotely like the Christ in the Bible that she sings about on a regular damn basis. Has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with the fact that once Donald Trump became the nominee, he decided to come out against same-sex marriage, and he decided to come out against a woman's right to choose, which is the quintessential reductionist interpretation of religion and how you should participate in politics. That is the crown jewel. That is the epitome of everything the religious right, the moral majority, these evangelical preachers, these prosperity preachers, the quintessential goal of all of them has been to find a way to participate in politics. And the only way they could find a way to participate in politics, and it was to oppose same-sex marriage and oppose abortion. That's it. Because if they brought anything else from their religion into their political participation, there's a good chance they probably could not vote for any party. But there's no way in hell they could ever vote for the Republican Party. Period. No way. And so they have crafted over the last 35 plus years this overly simplified interpretation of what it means to be a Christian in politics. And people like Pat Robertson took advantage of it strategically for political and economic gain. And I'm just going to be benevolent here and say Tina Campbell ain't no better. I'm going to use the African-American vernacular. She ain't no better. And so, you know, that's the only way you could look at them. But even if you look at Donald Trump through the lens of the evangelical, the predetermined method of participation for evangelicals, even if you look at Donald Trump through those lenses or through that lens, Donald Trump falls short, because who wants to take the over under on how many abortions Donald Trump has secretly paid for in his lifetime? I mean, seriously. So if you are looking at, man, I'm so tired of explaining this. Like, God, dog, people. All right, hang on. Let me reach up here again. Let me get another copy of my book. This is a big problem, and this is why it keeps coming back. I honestly thought I would write this book and it would become irrelevant sooner rather than later, but it's still relevant because you have people like Tina Campbell, and she's saying it indignantly. And then, you know, what happens is, you know, if you watch some of the video interviews of her, she's all indignant about it. She's talking, and this is what happens with religious people, right? They get embarrassed or they do something stupid, and then they try to justify it with religion, and they become indignant, and they try to talk with some spiritual authority, when in actuality, honey, sis, you've lost all spiritual authority, because you have this myopic view of what it is to even be a Christian in politics, and you base it on opposition to same-sex marriage, which we could get into that argument all by itself. We can get into the argument. If you're really against abortion, this is what I would say to anybody who's pro-life, because I'm pro-life, I'm pro-choice, I'm actually both, right? I'm actually both. But if you're really pro-life, then you would realize the number one reason women and families choose you would understand the largest group of women who get abortions are actually married. And the number one reason that those couples make that decision together is economic, because they don't have enough money to afford that third child. So if you're really pro-life, you wouldn't try to restrict a woman's right to choose, you would address the overwhelming reason for which married couples, women who are married, get abortions. And it's economic, but you're not really about that pro-life life. You're not, you're really about just lecturing people and telling them this is really, I'm really passionate about this because many of you may know, I don't want to say you don't know, but it's kind of like a cliche that we say in church. You really don't know, but I've been in a situation, my family in a situation where we really had to consider, are we going to have this child? Because it is such an economic strain, even when you are married, even when you're both working, when you're living in this capitalistic system, you could be married, working 2 jobs, and every bit of your money is being drained away. And you want to have this child, but you have to take a minute and pause and say, we can't afford this child. And so what do? Well, you pack up, you get the hell out of Boston because it's so goddamn expensive in Boston. And you move to Atlanta where you could pay half the rent and get 2 times as much space, and you do what you got. But how many people can't make that choice? I had that luxury. I had that ability. I had the talent to be able to do that. And I had an audience like you who were cool enough to come with me on that journey. But I'm passionate about that because this is the hinge point that they make these decisions about their political participation in opposition to abortion first and foremost, but yet they are aligning with a party who is going to further exacerbate the need for abortions. Because the number one reason women, according to the Guttmacher Institute, the number one reason women obtain abortions is economic, and they're married. So even based on the issues that Tina is talking about, but not expressly saying, because that's the only thing Donald Trump has even given lip service to with regard to religion. It's not about humility, because the motherfucker is far from humble. It's not about having patience and having long suffering. It's not about any of the beatitudes that our Sunday school teachers used to teach us about. It's not about having long suffering and the ability to care about other people. It's not about any of that, because Donald Trump has none of that. It's not about sexual morality based on the Bible definition, because he's shown that he has none, and he's proud of the fact that he has none. It's not even about his ability to be redeemed and forgiven, because he can't remember a goddamn time in his life that he asked for forgiveness. So based on what she's saying without saying it, it's really about the fact that he opposes same-sex marriage and he opposes abortion conveniently now. But again, how many, let's start a pool. How many abortions do you think? But anyway, that's besides the point. The point is this. Even based on what she's saying, she is contributing to this fallacy, to this false doctrine, to this insidious belief that if you are a Christian, you have to vote with the Republican Party. And so I would say, even in her negligence, or even in her confusion or whatever, I don't care what it is, shame on you as a believer who's contributing to the confusion around an ongoing problem that started with a group of men who were politically ambitious and wanted to get political power by mobilizing the religious right, and they did it, and we've been trying to undo it for the last 40 years. And if you were not aware of that, then maybe, just maybe, Tina, you should have taken a moment to find out something about it before putting your mouth on a situation that you're just making worse. Anyway, sorry, folks. I'm done with that. Yeah. Got me clapping hands like I went all black tonight. I went full black. All right. I don't even know if I have the energy, or I do have the energy, but I don't know if it's appropriate at this point for me to talk about. But what I will talk about tomorrow at the top of the show, I want to talk about Christopher Roybal, who was a Afghan vet who was killed. He had a Facebook post that really touched me. I mean, really, really touched me, because he described what it was like. He was killed in Las Vegas, and he described what it was like to be shot at. And that was his last Facebook post. And he was talking about what it meant to be shot at, or the emotions that he felt to be shot at in Afghanistan. And sadly, he after surviving Afghanistan, he came back to be killed in Las Vegas. So I want to end here because I don't want to go up after all that. I want to leave it there. And tomorrow we'll talk about Chris and some of the other people who were killed. Hey, folks, thanks so much for joining me and hanging out with me. It's always a pleasure. And I will see you tomorrow. Same time. Actually, no, tomorrow night. Correction. Tomorrow night is at 8 p.m. live. And we will see you there.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Crazy mother.
If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.